So I'm going to call him a different name. I don't have facial recognition in here. So,
Yeah, so first off, I'll just say there's another significant thing happening in our solar system besides the grand solar minimum, and that is that the sun isn't always in the centre of our solar system. From other factors, it can actually move about. And what happened recently, a couple of years ago, was that the gas giant planets, they were all lined up at one side of the sun, and it tugged the sun towards it by about 1 million kilometres. And Earth is spinning around the sun, and it has to play catch up to get up to where its new centre of gravity should be around the sun. And that's going to take 150 years. So, but now what's happening is that we're in winter, and we're closer to the sun, and we sort of get a mild winter because of that. But the Northern Hemisphere, America, they're actually in their summer, and they're 1 million kilometres closer to the sun now, and they're having a hell of a time with a lot more heat, activity and things like that.
Is that the Northern Hemisphere generally, Mark?
Yeah, and also in half a year, we'll when the axes get the other direction, our summer's going to be quite mild, but the America and Northern Hemisphere, they're going to have a freezing cold winter like they did last year, which we didn't hear much about, but a lot of records were broken. So that's something to keep in mind as we go along with the grand solar minimum. We're actually now a bit over 2 years into the grand solar minimum, but I'll first start off with I first heard of this about over 20 years ago. And it was on I don't know if any of you knew of Brian Wilshire, who did the radio show on 2GB. It was quite popular.
I've heard of him, yeah.
Yeah. He knew about it, and he had a lot of guests on. And amazingly, the guests I really remember was from the CSIRO. And they were talking about when this was happening, that they were wanting to get silos up north of Australia with extra grain storage, because there could be a problem with food shortages as the minimum went on. The other guest I remember was from the Sydney University, and he was going by his calculations that the southern ice cap would actually come up to just below New Zealand. So this was over 20 years ago, and that got smothered by global warming, but it was at the back of my mind until a couple of years ago when it was getting cold, but we got right back into it. Yeah. So that's certainly where the modern grand solar minimum we're in now. It started in 2020, and actually that's right, I've sent it on, it's to 2053 is when it shall end. So go to the next slide, Steve. So we've got a 400-year oddity. This is, I've come a bit, yeah, so those, like we've got the layers in the cliff. It's one thing that I noticed about every 400 years when the geologists were looking at cliffs and that, there was something happening, and they worked out that a cold period was happening every 400 years. And it also coincided with core samples in the ice. I found there's evidence of the planet got cold every 400 years, tree rings, and also when the layers in the cliff was signs of volcanic activity happening every 400 years at the same time. So they found that out, and also with carbon-14, they looking at carbon-14, it found out the same thing. There was a cooling period every 400 years roughly, and also amazingly the sunspots became less obvious, or there was less sunspots at this time. But through history, people have been looking at sunspots, especially the Chinese. Going back 800 years, they were getting quite accurate counts. And then we had Galileo, who about 500 years ago invented these amazing telescopes. And he was able to give us a very accurate account of the sunspots and their history. And from his work, we discovered that every 11 years there was a cycle. Next one, yeah. So every 400 years, in between that, we've got 11-year cycles where the sunspots get high, the sunspots get low, so they record the top bits are called the maximums, the lows are called the minimums of sunspot activity. But every 400 years, the sunspots almost were gone. And so they would call that the grand solar minimums. And so you can see that every 11 years there, how the Mortar minimum, which was the last grand solar minimum. It was a terrible cold time, that one, and then there
The
was...
Thames froze over.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And so, yeah, so it was cold, and we just started into this one now, the modern grand solar minimum. It's also called the Eddy solar minimum. So,
So Mark, are you saying that all of what we're experiencing with the crazy weather is actually natural and it's got nothing to do with what they're doing with the cloud seeding and the spraying and the rest of it?
only 100%.
Sorry?
Only 100%.
Thank you.
So with these sunspots, then they decided to realise that, well, it's got to be the sun, because obviously when the sunspots are low, the planet gets cold. When they're up high, the planet gets hot. It's obvious. But there was a problem with that theory, and that was at carbon-14. And carbon-14 is not of the Earth. It comes from outer space. It comes from cosmic rays. Yeah. And they come in. Most of it leans into trees, and they find it inside trees, and they get it out. But it's obvious that doesn't explain that the sun would actually get colder and you get more carbon-14. So there was another thing they had to work out, and that was what was going on with carbon-14. So the green, yeah, okay, so here's a cosmic ray there, but they can't capture that in this amazing, so yeah, go up to that one, yeah. So that's we've got a picture of a cosmic ray there, they're nasty little things. So, so when a sun explodes, it's had its time, it explodes, becomes a supernova, and then we've got all that exploding dust in it, but there's also an enormous amount of energy. And that energy turns into cosmic rays, and they actually fly through the universe almost the speed of light. And so we get cosmic rays from exploding suns in our own solar system, but mostly from other galaxies, all throughout the universe. They're flying through here. And so what they found out, these cosmic rays are entering during the grand solar minimum at a high rate. So what's happening? Why are they coming? So we get okay, so I'll just go a little, just before I do go into why, how we are getting warm, I'll just go into what cosmic rays, too much of these nasty little things can do. Decreased ozone layer. This is like a day's lecture in itself, what's that? But actually the cosmic rays, when they come into the atmosphere, they get into the ozone layer, and they chlorinate the ozone, and it comes into like a chlorine gas, and it disperses into it. And we haven't got the ozone protection from the ozone layer, and it makes for an erratic jet stream. Could get back to that later, but anyway, top and bottom of the planet, and also in between, we've got these gentle winds that fly around the planet. The aircraft used to fly into them since they're so gentle, and they get a free ride. Yeah. They are no longer gentle flying because of the decreased, see, that's what it should be like, the left one. Now it's more like the right one. And so we, that is causing the currents or the Earth's temperatures to all intermingle and do all sorts of odd things. The most thing that we'll notice at the moment is that hot air on the equator is actually coming into the mid-latitudes. So you might have heard about record-breaking temperatures in England and India, Pakistan, or that they are isolated. They're not talking. There's just websites where we've got the NOAA satellites, the NASA satellites. NOAA's are the National Oceanic and Atmospheric satellites. They'll show you the temperature of all the time. They've got special ability to see the temperature of the planet. The planet's getting very cold, and it's showing it's where it's cold, but only these isolated hot pockets. So they're only reporting on these hot pockets which are happening.
And this is all due to the presence of carbon-14 and bombarding us in form of
They're
cosmic rays?
decreasing the ozone layer and upsetting and it's taking the pressure off the jet stream. And so the jet stream keeps cold air in the poles mostly, and the hot air on the equator. Now that's gone automatic, that these air currents are going all over the place.
I don't want to stop your flow, Mark, sorry,
Yeah.
but not that long ago that we had a big, like scare about the ozone layer.
Yeah.
And it was because it was our fault,
Mm.
because of the gases that we were releasing,
No,
from our refrigerators and
Yeah.
what have you.
You can Google
Is that-
cosmic rays effect on the ozone layer, it'll come up. It turns into chlorine gas. So
Yes.
I don't know what that was about. I remember that it was a bit crazy, and they said it was just a natural occurring thing. So who knows? But if I could go back down to that.
Thank you.
Yeah. It causes flash droughts. We're getting massive amount of. It can open up a pocket, a hole in the ozone layer. You get all this UV radiation come in, and it can cause what they call in a flash drought. An area, it could be the size of a town or something, get all this ultraviolet radiation come so quickly and suddenly dry everything out. There was one bloke talking about he's got these farms up in Canada, and they always have a huckleberry plants because nothing can upset them. They've droughts, floods, everything. They're the most robust plant you can get.
Like blackberries.
Yeah. But amazingly, it never's happened before, but they died within 3 days of being healthy and watered. So you get like these flash droughts that's happening in pockets.
So is that what's happened to California?
Yeah, could well be, yeah.
Because
yeah.
California was the growing area,
Yeah,
and it's now so devastated,
yeah.
and now they've got no water.
Yeah, same my brothers in Texas is talk about the same thing, yeah. It compresses the atmosphere. This is affecting us at the moment, actually. Although we're closer to the sun, we're having a mild winter. The temperatures haven't actually gotten that low. I know, I've got honey at home. Nearly every year there's a period there where it crystallises from the cold. This has happened this year. But it's been feeling very cold late this year.
My honey's crystallised.
Yeah, I was going to say mine has too.
Yeah. So it's a bit closer to the sun. Maybe that's the reason I got appreciate it. But the atmosphere's been compressed, and it's also been electrified by the cosmic rays. And the moisture in the air is becoming more concentrated. So although it's cold, there's always moisture in the air. It's more concentrated, and like if you whip your hand with the hose and you put out the wind, it's going to get very cold because that water has made it colder. The wind's blowing it off to make it cold, transferring the heat. So that's sort of what you got now. You've got more moisture in the air, and when you go outside, especially a tiny bit of wind, you're going to get a lot colder. So it's been also.
Are you talking about humidity?
Yeah.
Is that
basically,
more?
Yeah.
Okay.
And in the northern hemisphere, or even like if you remember last year, we haven't got it over the old 138 degrees here in a few years, but we had some terribly humid weeks last year, if you remember.
Yes.
Because the atmosphere's been compressed, and also that the cosmic rays are putting energy into the electrical energy into the water that's in the air. So, I'm doing a minute. So, so I might go up. That's a few things there. Talk about magnetic protection from these cosmic rays. So, the sun, the sun and Earth both like dynamos. We've got like these electrical engines. We're on an iron ball in the centre of the planet, so it's rotating, it's creating electricity, and that creates a magnetic field around the planet. The sun's the same, but it's got a plasma ball in the middle that's gone solid. It rotates, it creates electricity, and it makes a massive big bubble around our solar system. It goes just a little bit past Pluto. Don't worry. But anyhow, it's a big bubble, and it's like the sun's protecting all the baby planets from these nasty little cosmic rays with that magnetic field. It's called the heliosphere. NASA's actually put a lot of satellites in the heliosphere to study the magnetic bubble there that's protecting us.
Is that the big grey area, Mark?
What about where the pointer is?
Yeah, that is, yeah.
That's the
It's just got-
protected.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's protects us.
Sorry, was that the dark area or the grey area?
Basically, I can't be too sure. All I know is it's just to the outside of Pluto. So,
Okay.
yeah, so it's a big, and it's massive, of course.
The thing that used to be a planet.
So can
Yeah,
you
that's
just
right,
show
yeah.
us where, on your pointer where Pluto is, please, Steve?
I can't see Pluto.
And also the Earth's
Not
got
from
its.
here anyway.
Next to Uranus, mate.
He's on there.
And also,
Sorry, they've had a schoolboy joke.
Anyway, that protects us from a lot of the cosmic ray, but even more so, the Earth's magnetic field filters out a lot more. I think it's mostly by deflection that it deflects these rays away from us. But bad news, that protection during the grand solar minimum is decreased by about 70%.
Wow.
So the cosmic rays are coming in a lot. 20%, I think it's that's decreased by 70%. I think we get a 20% increase of cosmic rays here on the planet now that we're in the grand solar minimum. As you said, the Thames in the is the next one that spiky?
They're harmful to
that's
humans, aren't they?
the same. That's the bad news that we've lost it.
They're harmful to us, aren't they?
Yeah, about the Thames.
As
Yeah.
in cancers
yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, so
That's what we're talking
during the last water minimum, we lost the sun's protection. We got the extra cosmic rays. We had that cold period, and so the Thames froze at that time. The glaciers came down in North America into the farmlands. The Dutch canals froze over. There was terrible suffering. A lot of civilizations actually in China, South America, they perished.
So Mark, was that in the 1600s and the 1700s? Is that the period you're talking about, or?
In the red bit, that's 1650.
Yeah. Okay. Is
Yeah.
that that's not when the potato famine was?
Yeah, just to go to it right now, actually, but here is like the. It should have ended there, the Morden minimum, but it went on very long. But halfway through there, there's a mini minimum, and that was called the Dalton minimum. It's not as big as the grand solar minimum. It just happens for a little while, and also gets very, very cold. That was when that had the potato famine. Dr. Mullane was talking to this other doctor about how psychosis, how to fool people. And one people that the psychologists were studying was the Napoleon Wars, when one part there was when they wanted to trick the British into something pretty sneaky, and so they made out that Napoleon's army they had no morale, they were running short of ammunition, they were fighting each other for food, and so it's given that trying to trick the British to thinking that but the British didn't trust Napoleon. They knew he was sneaky, but the French finally found a way to get through to fool him, to trick him that they were in disarray, and so they decided to attack the French at one stage. So they chased the French onto a frozen lake, and then amazingly the French soldiers who were supposed to be weak or in bad state got all this energy and ran off the lake. And then they got their cannons and bombed the lake, the frozen lake, and all the British soldiers drowned. So that happened in the Dalton minimum, and also the French in the British, they had the cannons. And they used to have this brass plate, and they put the cannonballs on that and make like a pyramid. And so they had little arms around the edge of it, and so they nicknamed it the brass monkey. You know where I'm going with this? It got so cold that the balls toppled off there, and so it's expression fruits balls. Okay, so so.
See, Tim would have had no trouble saying that.
I'm really, well, Mark gathers his thoughts, I'm really glad that, like, when I found out about that, because I thought it had something to do with a really cold actual animal monkey. No, it's the balls of a brass monkey. I thought there was a really cold monkey that had cold balls, but I'm sure it does. Sorry, Marco.
Yeah, no, I'm still the same. Also, I've got the next one. I've got, yeah. Now I'll go into a couple of legends that we've got with us. This first one is John L. Casey. He was one of the chief designers of the space shuttle. He was the NASA advisor to the White House, a very, very intelligent man. But he left NASA to write books on the grand solar minimum, because he would know about this, because designing the space shuttle, he knew that in this period there's going to be extra space radiation coming in. Cosmic rays are also called space radiation, so knew that was going to happen, but he left NASA and wanted to make people aware, because he did a lot of research into this. And with his book, he wrote it in 2014, and it was called Dark Winter, a bestseller. And from this book, he created, unknowingly or unwantedly, the Dark Winter preppers. So basically preppers all through the States and Canada who were going to prepare for this coming mini, what they call it, mini ice age that was coming. And so a lot of the information I got was from a lot of preppers with John. So I'll get, and he also, when we talk about the last grand solar minimum and mortar minimum, he studied that very deeply to study how people survived that, and he put that into his book because he wanted to help people as much as he could to survive this coming minimum. He had a lot of friends that he wanted him to create the volcanic early warning system. As one thing I haven't talked about was that the cosmic rays, when they enter into the Earth, they can get into the Earth's magma and into the silica. Yeah, exactly, yeah. So that's why we get more volcanic activity during the grand solar minimum, that cosmic rays creating bubbles in the magma, and that's expanding it, and we get that volcanic thing.
So we're going into this time frame now, is that right?
Yes, yeah. It's starting,
so they'll just say that that's climate change happening.
In June 2020 we entered it, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's 11 years?
33. Yeah. Yeah, so
It's going to last
Yeah,
for
so we've got a way to go.
33 years.
The rest of my lifetime.
So John L. Casey was classed as a climate denier. So he was rubbished by everybody that the media would get to listen to them. But amazingly, he had friends that wanted him to start the early volcano warning system, because he knew there was a way of warning people about volcanoes, and he was the best in the world to do it. And the American government paid for that outfit to be opened up, so it's a bit of hypocrisy, you know, my big word, hypocrisy.
Hypocrite.
Sorry, no, I was going to say. So anyway, and his latest book is called Upheaval. It was about how people can survive the coming volcanic activity, which is going to possibly get worse. So.
And that will make things even colder.
Exactly, yes, yeah, you get all that ash and iron oxide in the air. Yeah, cooling the planet, yeah. Now we go on to the real,
I wanted to ask you the answer to that equation.
oh, right, yeah, I've got it.
So will New Zealand be pretty bad?
This next bit I'll call, I'm going to go up a bit more, because that's chapter. I'm calling this Professor Valentina Sakova and her amazing formula. Now, Professor, I'll call her Valentina, that's easier. She was a solar physicist. She was one of the best. And a particle physicist, and she left that to become a mathematician. I'll go back down to the
Better picture.
So she became a mathematician, and then she went back to become a solar physicist, and she became like a super physicist. Of solar activity, and she works mostly with NASA. She has what she calls a task force. It's all around the world. Here in Australia, all in the observatories. She's big. And she's probably the go-to girl for the grand solar minimum. Although, as I'll go on, it's hard to get through to hear about her now, but it's. So she created this formula. She found out the magnetic baseline of the sun. It took so long, and she discovered that. And once she discovered that, she came up with this formula, and with that formula, she was able to tell, using that formula, what would happen if you said like a date like 2,500 years ago, what the weather was like. This formula could almost tell you exactly what was going on there because it was telling what the sun was doing. So with 97% accuracy, she could tell what was happening back 3,000 years, and everything that's happened from the date she came up with that formula forward was also 97% accurate. One of the things she predicted before we come into the minimum, that there would be a couple of very, very hot years. She called that the double spike before we go down into the minimum. The global warmers use that, saying that we predict through our models that it's going to be a hot year this year, that year. All they did was they used her formula, and they got 100%. It really stinks, and it's despicable the way they treated her. So she also discovered solar quakes, earthquakes that happened on the sun. She gave a date for the when the grand solar minimum would begin. Oh, first of all, it's not only low sunspots. What's happening is that the electric field of the sun, or any electric field, needs a more powerful side so that current can flow in one direction. Need like a stronger positive and a lesser negative, and that flows that way, and then a stronger negative and a lesser positive, and it can flow that way. So there's suddenly, every 11 years, the sun's magnetic poles change, and you get this thing happening. But what happens on cycle 23, the positive and negative become equal of the magnetic fields of the sun. They become equal and they crash and they stop. And so she discovered that, and what's happened in the grand solar minimum is that it gets to that level, and then the magnetic fields collapse. And we have not really, that's why we get the low magnetic protection from the sun. And it takes 33 years or 3 cycles of the sun for that to recalibrate and come back on. So that's what she discovered, and that's what the grand solar minimum is really about. So the magnetic fields equalising, collapsing and recalibrating. So,
and that's what we're entering now.
I'll tell you right now. I can tell you what. She gave the date. I can't be exactly sure. I think it was 8th of June in 2020. She said that was the date that we would enter the grand solar minimum. Now, if you were a following Valentina, you would the 7th of June we'll go to bed, and the 8th comes along. She said it's going to take a long time for the ice age to happen. Right? We know that, but you get up, open the blind, the sun's still out, it's not raining, it's not cloudy. I'll just go and check the thermometer. It still hasn't gone down, but we just ended it, She's right about everything, and all of a sudden there's nothing really. I'll just open the door and have a quick look at the sun, just a flash look at it. Wow. I don't think the scientists or anyone knew that there would be such a visual thing actually happened to the sun. The sun, if your daughter, kids draw it, or it's a yellow sun, a big disc, am I correct there? It's no longer yellow, it's now pure white. On that day, the sun became pure white when the magnetic field shut down. And so if you want to have a quick flash look, remember the UV is a bit stronger now, but if you want to have a quick flash look at the sun, it is pure white, it is not yellow, and it is so bright you can't even detect where it is in the sky. So I guess, what do you do then if you're following Valentina?
So Mark, is one of the characteristics of that, because this is something that I thought I observed, was that when the sun would go behind a cloud, it's like a lot cooler, and when you're in the direct light of the sun, it can be very, very hot, but it's not heating the air. So it's like it's a different, to me, like I was working outside, it felt like a different frequency. So it's hotter on the skin, but not hotter in the air. And the white, I've been pointing out to blokes at work who think I'm crazy, like that the sun is a different colour. And it is a different colour,
Yeah.
but they can't agree to see it
No.
because it doesn't fit
Mm.
with them. But I have definitely noticed that even in winter time up in the highlands where it can be like 6 degrees, the sun comes out directly on the skin and
Yeah.
it's hot. So we were working on a building site, and on one side of the building, blokes were working in singlets in the sun, and on the other side, we had like 4 layers on
Yeah,
because it was
you're right.
so freaking cold
Stuff like
in,
that.
in the
Yeah,
shade.
yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
putting that out. Yeah, because that's all that. That's
So the
Marky,
frequency must be different.
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
That's what I was. It's a
UV
different frequency.
Because we've got no magnetosphere to absorb certain levels.
Yeah, so it's just got different characteristics, and that's yeah.
Like you say, it was just real, like between the 7th and the 8th, we went from yellow sun to white sun.
Yeah.
Really? That, like overnight?
Yeah, basically, yeah. So I can't be sure on that. I just sort of.
Yeah.
But that she gave the date. To the
Yeah.
date. People thought it was knew it happened round about every 400 years. And I'd say like between 2018, 2025. She gave the date. So she's a remarkable person.
Can't remember
There's
how
been a
they
lot of
say.
talk about the Earth's planet magnetic field flipping. Is that to do with the magnetic field of the sun being
Yeah, I've tried. Yeah, I've been trying to follow that, and I can't find anyone I can find confident enough to agree that there's a lot of stuff on the internet that people saying they know what they're doing. I've looked at 2 universities have complete. You think, well, I'll follow what the universities are saying, but they're contradicting each other. One saying that we've got something to worry about if the Earth's magnetic field swaps. We're going to get so much more space radiation, more rain. The other one say, no, we've looked at all the other times that it's flipped and not much has happened. There were some wombats in Australia that became extinct, but that's about the only thing they can find that really happened. And also saying that we're overdue because it's supposed to happen about every 300,000 years or something. We're well overdue, but it actually swapped 40,000 years ago and then stayed like that for 1,000 years and went back to where it originally was. So they're saying that doesn't count. So there's a lot of drama there. I can't find anyone who's got
Is
confidence.
it to do with Milankovitch cycles?
I don't know of that.
You don't-
So I can't know. Yeah, so, yeah, but that's a good point. I would try and follow and make sense of it, but they're using stuff that's happened with the grand solar minimum to give support to their argument and all this. So I really don't know. It's but this one I've got a lot of confidence in because of both basically Valentina Zakeva, John L. Casey, and there's 2 Russian scientists who are way up there at the moment because they're allowed to have media access in Russia, and it's common knowledge with the Russians about what's happening with the atmosphere. So, she sent a paper to all the governments in the world. Please, she turned to the grand solar minimum. We have to do something about food supply, storage, and she told it. She explained quite clearly about how we're going to get very cold. It all got rejected. She got extremely upset, and she sent out a second paper to everybody again, clearly showing how the recent warming was caused by the sun, not by carbon and that. And it was, she pinpointed it, and again it got rejected. And then she became known as a filthy climate denier. All that she's done, and she basically she hit it. She went from being public, but her research and that still went on because especially with NASA.
So basically, didn't she send a letter to all the world governments?
Yeah.
And they foo-fooed her, and she sent a second one, and she got foo-fooed again.
Yeah.
And then she was totally like decimated by the press.
Yeah.
Platformed.
So she must be right.
Yeah.
And
Yes, it's always
Oh,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
flack its
She-
heads when you're over the target.
Yeah, a couple of about 2018 she came back. She did a little. She was invited to do a conference to talk. She was prepared in this one to accept that global warming would heat the Earth by 1 watt per square metre, but the grand solar minimum will decrease it by 6 watts. And she gave all the reasons and that. She got a bit of respect there. And it's on the internet. It's called.
So we have to produce more carbon to heat the place up more.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
They're going the wrong way.
We need more cows to fart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
People need.
Oh, I could help.
Not now.
Yeah, should the Dems called Professor Valentina's like over breaks of silence. That's a million thing there.
Not the silence you were going to break, Ross.
What's the name of the thing you were going to say?
The about breaks of silence. It's just a video. It's on they haven't been able to delete that off the internet. It's still there. A lot of her work gets deleted. The last one that got deleted was only about 4 weeks ago. She wrote a scathing report to every government and saying that we need to do something about food shortage right away because what's about to happen.
No.
And it got completely erased off the internet.
Fertiliser, ammonium nitrate, that cut the production over 40%. So the population can't survive that much of
No.
fertiliser. Because the fertiliser is created out of air, out of condensing
Yeah. Oh,
No.
yeah.
the
Exactly.
nitrogen out of the air. That's how it's made. It's compressed to 13 bars.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then nitrogen and hydrogen, and it creates the ammonium nitrate, which is the fertiliser. It's artificially created because bird poop is now scarce on the planet, so they artificially created. By dropping it 40%, it's going to kill a wild population because they can't put the nutrient back in the soil to keep up the production levels.
Oh,
So
right.
plants planted will die.
Right, scary.
So that's another problem.
Can't we
Everyone gets some
formulate
comfy.
urine and do that? Use that for like,
It
sorry?
adds
If
nitrogen.
everybody, if you collected all your urine and used that as a,
You mean cow on the piss?
no, it's just,
Yeah, well, the Chinese use that, I guess,
yeah,
in their production.
they use those methane gas sort of vats that they have as well, sort of thing.
I heard recently that chlorine
Yeah.
is disappearing as well.
It works the urine
Yeah,
works.
but they use that
Much happens.
to clean our water.
Get water down in it.
And that's dangerous. Chlorine is actually more harmful to your health than fluoride.
Keep on.
Oh, anyway, another important date was that she gave was 2028 is when we're going to get some really severe food shortage. But there are the Russians ones. Some saying it'll be 2025. She also said that it won't be as cold or as long as the Mortimer, which is the last grand solar minimum. She with that what I was talking about the sun moving and we're catching up and the northern hemisphere being close to the sun in summer, etc. She gave that that's kind of the significant event that's happening in the northern hemisphere at the moment. Also, be a big corona hole will increase on the sun. It's basically when the sun bursts, it cuts a big hole and it brings out a lot of radiation that will hit the Earth. That could knock out grids, electric grids. I thought it may knock out little electronic devices, but it won't. Just mainly the main. Yeah, they'll be all right. It's only if Vladimir sets off an EMP bomb on top of us. You've got to worry about that. Yeah.
Mark, it's interesting that she said 2028 because I keep reading intermittently that they're saying by 2028 we're going to have a mass exodus of
Deaths.
death.
Oh.
Yeah, from presumably from the vaccines, but maybe it's a bit more than
Yeah.
that.
Well, starvation.
Yeah, by
starvation.
starvation. And
Yeah. We'll get on to that. Yeah.
Hang on, 2028.
So with John L. Casey and Valentina, just two little arguments there that they don't work with. But one was that John L. Casey thought that there's no way that there'll be enough food. There's going to be terrible things that I'll show you shortly. But Valentina thought that there was something that we could do to save a lot of people during this cold period. The next one. So now we'll talk about what's slowly happening in the shadows. That we have with the cosmic rays, when they hit water particles in the sky, they rip the electron off any particle that's in the air, and they make it positively charged, then all other water droplets that are in the air will get attracted to that, and it's got a chain reaction, and that's how clouds are formed. Especially if you've got pollution, you've got all those extra stuff in the air that'll make bigger clouds, and so that's what we've got now. Because of that, we've got 20% increase in cloud. You can see that quite clearly on the NOAA satellites. The cloud has increased on the planet. You can Google any country and type in, like, say, London floods, Mexico floods, Hong Kong floods, Bateman's Bay rain. Everywhere's having trouble with floods or drought, and so. But basically, it's the cloud cover, and that's what's slowly cooling the planet, very slowly. It's like if you're out on a sunny day, you're standing just a little bit, one shoulder behind the shadow of a wall, and you just move like an inch closer to the shadow, and it's not, you're not going to feel much. But that's what's slowly cooling the planet. You get that less sun on the ground, more sun being reflected off the top of clouds. And so it's probably going to take about 10 years till it gets really cold. But in the meantime, every year there's stuff happening. I've got a lot of, where I've got grasses now, moss, a lot of areas. I work in the dairy industry. They're having, like, the trouble they're having there with the mud, with the cows suffering. A lot of them building concrete slabs just so that cows, like, well, the rain should, well, I assume, going to come back once we get out the winter period. It could come back again, and the cows are suffering so bad that pebbles are getting their fools. They have to lie down to rest. They lie down in the mud. Sometimes they can't get up. Sometimes the mud's so bad it can't get attracted to them to sling them up. A lot of the farms out west, the grass is not growing the way it should. The grass they have got has not got much nutrient in it, so they decided to put up big slabs, shed roofs, and feed them grain. Now the production cost of buying that grain is too much. They're closing. It's also with the buying the fertiliser, saying that a lot of farm. I don't even know of Lauren, who's one of the Narra girls. She works getting fresh vegetables through Kangaroo Valley. She sells them. The farms she worked with, they can't produce anymore. You can see what's happening. It's slowly, even though we're only a couple of years into it, it's having an effect already.
And the animals that have to eat grain, to be more concentrated on grain fed, they have to have more antibiotics because their systems don't handle the grains the same as they do the grasses, and they become ill. And that's the problem with grain fed beef. When they get grain fed beef, I watched a thing in Canada with identical twins, a couple of brothers, and at the end of it they were asked if they eat the meat that they grow, and it was almost before the question was finished being asked, they both said no together. And the reason why they don't is because their meat is cancerous, because they get acidosis from eating the grain, and they have to give them so much antibiotics, and it gets to a point where they've got a cost benefits ratio, where if the cow gets to the point where it's consuming too much antibiotics, they get rid of the cow. And they have to do that. And if a calf were to get a ratio of grain that was outside the gradient that they use, like, so yeah, they're supposed to start here, but if for some reason they got fed at this level, it would kill them. And if they had a frost or something overnight, they actually freeze inside. So, but there's a whole lot of ramifications for the meat that you get when they feed it on grain-fed stuff.
Feed grubs, mate.
They're full of cancer. Crickets is the new go. Somebody said I saw that. Anyway, we'll keep moving on.
Mark, I can't remember, but I think it was sometime in the 1800s. The sun got obliterated across a vast area of the world, and no vitamin D came through for the people, and no vitamin D came through for the plants. And I believe it lasted for about a year. And I believe there were millions and millions of people who died when this happened.
Was it called the year without a summer or something?
I can't remember, but I know I read about it, and I'm pretty sure it was in the 1800s.
That would be right.
So also the ground temperature here has actually been lowering as well. The farms say when they grow the grass, I know that they've got to be very careful, but the ground temperature is surprisingly a lot lower than thing.
You got any good news, Mark?
Let's get into it. 3 pages on.
Go to the
Look at
next,
We're bad news, it's just a warning.
Sorry.
I'll go up the next slide. Steve. You go up the page, right?
Oh, there's the good news.
There you go, Ross.
Right on cue.
And a bit
Beautiful.
more, a bit more, yeah.
Oh, hang on, we're going to stay there for a second.
I just wanted that caption on the Great Human page. So
Too
go
fast.
back to the
Back, back,
To the
back.
happy face, above the happy face.
yeah.
Just there.
A bit more,
Just below.
and a bit more. There's a caption underneath there.
Under the happy.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. Oh, I can't find it. And we're calling this next week the Great Human Purge. Basically, yeah, I'll go up a bit more. I'll get that bit in.
Which one's that?
The writing, yeah. John L. Casey wrote that Dark Winter. This is part of we've read the back of the book. And I just read the last bit. This new climate will dramatically impact the world's citizens. A sobering look at Earth's future, Dark Winter predicts worldwide crop destroying cold, food shortages and riots in the United States and abroad, significant global loss of life, and social, political and economical upheaval. That was written in 2016. So, this is what it says.
That happy face didn't work.
No. But the planet.
Keep scrolling, Steve.
But can you imagine how? Imagine the planet with a lot of these nasty humans gone. We'd be happy. So I don't know about us. So there's going to be a lot of natural food reduction, and it also seems like there's been a lot of man-made food reduction as well. What's the next one of that thinking? Yeah. So up a bit more. I forget those. I've got a caption on it. I forget what I wrote on it. Oh, got a perplexing issue here. Like, so we've got in the modern minimum there was 1 billion people on the earth. Now there's nearly 8 billion. So it's 8 billion, and so there's 8 times more people than there was back then. And I used to say to Bindi when she was little, if you've got these trucks for Coles supermarket coming in, those trucks ever stop, we're all going to starve. But we, so it's
Just in a matter of days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could happen so quickly. So I'm just wondering that. What's the next one? So if you consider that food gets short, and we know what's happening, the government's on us, so we're going to get cold. There's no way we can support 8 billion people. If it ever come out, I think there'd be like panic, and people would want to get as much food as they can. And even if it gets to the stage where without being told we see around us there's hardly any food, then there could be like a panic period, a period where, and also, so I just wonder why I'm saying it's a perplexing issue. Is something happening to us, the people of this earth, to radically to diminish the population way down so that this panic doesn't happen? Because if this panic happens with 8 billion people, we'll raise the earth. We'll all the vegetate, all the animals, they'll be, as we converge towards the equator possibly, everything in a way will be eaten. The ecosystems, so the animals, the plants all work together, be totally wiped out. It could be that if people were to survive this minimum, which could easily do, the earth has been raised by panicking people. And so could it be possible that some people are wanting deliberately to have
Reduce
natural
the
food reduction, man-made food reduction, the medical, what we all hear for, I guess, is that also another reason? Reckons point, so we don't get to the stage where we panic and raise the earth and make anything possible for the next people, whoever they may be, to...
So do you think they're starting the culling process of humans already?
I really can't answer that. I feel that, I think that, but I can't. I just wish there was someone who would.
I think you'll find with what they're doing
Yeah.
is they're maximising a whole lot of different scenarios together to achieve one goal of population reduction.
Yeah.
And it's never, ever, ever about one thing. Everything is always a combination of things, and you use Mother Nature, because like if they know of this, but they're telling you the opposite, global warming, then it becomes climate change, then that covers everything. It doesn't matter what you're doing, but because they're trying to gear people up towards global warming, and the reason why we've got to reduce the population, then they bring in all this other legislation that they've brought in. So this is something that they would be aware of, and what they're doing now is propelling us into a situation where we can't get through it, but it's not for our good, it's for the good of the elite that believe that there's too many people and they want to utilise the planet to their benefit, and they have the technology to the point where they don't need the manpower to produce the things that they need. They don't need the manpower to create the technology to get off planet if that's what they want to do. They've got the AI, they've also got the ability through cloning and through in vitro fertilisation and through the artificial creation of life that they can create the life forms that they want. So all of that comes in together, and your time's up, you useless eaters, time to exit, stage left, and now we've got the designer world coming through. That's part of what it is. That's why we've got the job, again, of getting rid of these bastards, because when you say there's 8 billion people on the planet, we've got 7 billion more people who can think of stuff, right, to deal with it.
Exactly.
No, we have.
Exactly.
We have.
Yeah.
We can do it. It's not a problem. But when you've got a government system in place that is satanic,
Yeah.
right, and they're only interested in themselves, and these fools are so stupid they don't realise that they're part of what's going to be consumed. They're just useful idiots that are in there thinking they're lording over us. But it's like your council. Your mayor isn't your mayor. He's just a puppet. Right, the same as all, they've got their private corporation behind. This government, you see, that's not who's running things. Even when I talked to Darryl O'Brien, he was in Parliament for 6 months, he said there's 23 to 24 people who write everything that's spoken. That when these people go into Parliament and they speak, they don't produce their own pieces of paper, not the ones that are the lifelong politicians. So this is all a construct, and they'll use anything that occurs sort of naturally to capitalise on it. But if you have a look at it, they're gearing you up for the opposite. They're gearing you up for heat, and the water's the ice is going to melt, and the land's going to go underneath. But even when you listen to that, they tell you the water level's going to go up this much in 50 years. Like Archimedes' bath does more than that, if you know what that's about. So this is a combination of things, and then they're opportunistic. They'll use natural circumstances to further their goals. But we can thwart that, and we can do it together. We need the community that operates outside their system, but ultimately we must remove their system as well. So we've all got different sort of roles within there. Sorry for stealing you.
No, thanks for that. Yeah.
One of the ladies tonight was saying that some of the processed foods is being made with cricket flour.
Yeah, it's on the packet.
So we've got these forces to come to a point to knock the population down. There could be a probable transition period, a violent, horrible period where everyone wakes up, nothing they can do. You could have gangs going door to door trying to get food. You could get massive lines outside of hospitals, farms being raided. So it wouldn't hurt to sort of keep that in the back of your mind and prepare for that in case that could happen.
What about the oceans? What about the oceans? Like, would that be a good place to source? Yeah, to source food.
Just one, apparently that is, and with the major ice ages, the tropics were never affected. It's like, you go and ask a tropical jungle after a big ice age. Yeah, what do you think of that ice age? It's really just they survived it really well.
So we all should get some fishing gear
you don't know what's going to happen.
some nets.
You don't know what's going to happen with currents and tsunamis.
And a boat.
Yeah. But if that probable transition period does happen, this is the one thing I really hope that if anything I can get you to stockpile more food for yourself. And you also must, in a group, we must help those who are less fortunate. Like a lot of us are lucky to work and get stuff. Like we've got, can help physically. So there would be people in the group that not as able to do that, but we've got to keep them in mind as well, in case, because it could be a terrible time. I knew I got onto this guy who fought the way I did. He was preparing for the Grand Salt Minimum for 7 years. I think he was an American, and all the time he was looking for the sweet spot, the one spot on the planet where he could go, where it would be the best place to survive this minimum. And he certainly found it, and that was in Atherton Tablelands in Cairns. It's up high, it's cool that the tropical heat, moist air doesn't get up there. He found lots of things about it, and that's where he moved to. And he showed pictures of his warehouse. He's got a warehouse full of stuff, everything. He's full on. But then he became, then he got shocked. Something affected him, and he said, "I don't know who's coming here." He got a feeling that, although he found the sweet spot, he think that other people had their mind on it. And he eventually broke contact with me. He got suspicious of
Paranoia.
Yeah, his latest invention was a big bug-out truck. It was a huge truck, which is so he's right. I don't know, but Steve would know more about it. But he got the feeling someone has also got their eyes up north of Australia as well.
Well, if you were going to stockpile, like we were saying, and there is a transition period, the last thing you want to do is tell people where you stockpile. I've got a warehouse, but hey, where do we go first?
It's actually in the private email with him. So,
right.
Yeah, you might think you're a threat as well. Like,
that's what he
you
did.
told us, man. Like, someone in the Atherton Tablelands got into food, mate. I'm going there.
Yeah.
What was his address?
But that's it. I mean, like you can talk about having veggie gardens and everything like that, and I live on a domestic block. But I sort of got really mad. There'd be people just jumping the fence at each day, whatever time of day, whatever it is.
That's what John L. Casey said, that you've got to have a food supply, but you've got to be able to protect it. Because he had terrible riots in the States. The Canadian, the dark winter predators in well, the Canadians don't want to come down. They'll be warmer down in the States. They don't want to go down. They don't want to stay there. And they equip themselves very well, but they won't go down to the States where the guns are. Just thinking of like a few survival tips, like the one thing is that it happens every 400 years. It's not an extinction event. The Aborigines in Tasmania didn't have a problem with it. The Maoris, New Zealand had problems. The Eskimos didn't. The only people that had a problem with it was people that cultivated. They were the ones who suffered. And it's happening very slowly. We had Ash McIntosh talk about how she's Aboriginal, to talk about how when this happened, the Aborigines seem to know about it. They just move on to where, if that grass is not growing or that tree's not giving fruit, they go find out what is. They don't force it, they just follow it, and it's happened and it hasn't affected them. And just for like clothing, the Canadians are crazy about their skins. The Russians, Siberia, they go for skins.
And the fur, don't
Furs,
they?
The good thing to remember is that an enemy of the cold is if you're working and you're sweating, you create a grease that gets on your clothes. So I know the special forces, if they're working in snow-high country or whatever, they've got to wash at least twice a day to get that cold grease off them, because that gets in the clothing and that makes it terrible. But then again, you've got people that climb Mount Everest will use synthetic clothing. So the other thing is you don't want to overdo it. You want to move with the climate. Don't overclothe. Acclimatise. Remember that 80% of heat loss comes through your head, so you want a good hat. And a tinfoil hat might be a bad idea for
We've all got one of those.
And one of the keys, if there is a population reduction and there are people going north or whatever, the massive big warehouses, Bunnings or the industrial area, that would be a great thing if we could. You want iron and want tin or stone on top of you, stop the help stop with the radiation, but also the what are they called, the clear plastic polycarbonate. That's, I didn't know that, but that is very effective at stopping the cosmic rays. And of course you can have like massive internal plants going, kind of animals inside, chickens, and you can even put caravans and stuff inside the warehouses. That could be one idea. We're so, like in Australia, like just out there, we've got so much wood, coal, we've got a lot to burn. And one thing is to remember about human nature. It's like I think all of us know that we will need a community to survive, and we all need a community just to be comfortable, and there's a lot of people working together. But you also have to understand that in our nature we are selfish, and not to look at that as being a bad thing. Just say, for instance, one of the ladies here's got 3 containers full of chocolate because she knows she's not going to live without chocolate every day. We know about that in the community. We don't touch it. That's she wants to contribute. She can do with it other than working with the community. A mechanic might come passing through. He's got a big semi-trailer full of equipment and guns and ammo. It's his. We know it's there. He says, "I don't want you touching that." I worked for that. I prepared for it. We've got to respect that this selfishness is a part of survival. And if we want them to be part of the community, we'll have to work with that. And there may be people that can't work with an authoritarian environment. We can get them to work outside. But so we have to learn knowing that, because we want as many people in the community to make it work, and we want them not to go. So that's just when things get bad, it's just something to keep thinking about. So I'll just not go on those slides that I've got. I sort of basically finished. That first one there, that's the river in France. It's never stopped flowing. It's now just a few puddles in there. That's because of the droughts. We're not only getting rain, we get drought. The next one. They've got the heat wave in the UK, suffers July, like it got to 37 degrees, but then went down to 2.9, it's 2.9, which you didn't hear about. We heard about the heat, but didn't hear about the cold. There is the cosmic rays are putting electricity into the clouds. You're getting pictures like this come through where you get like this. Oh yeah. That's just one of them. If you get onto the Grand Solar Minimum on Facebook, you'll get a lot of information come through.
What's causing that sort of metallic? I thought it was to do with chemtrails.
Could be, I'm not sure.
Combination of
but
maybe.
they seem to be getting but on a scientific angle, it's putting electricity into the...
Right.
Well, just with what you're talking about that, with California, some of the stuff I've been going through in geoengineering, California's really been getting hammered with the chemtrails and with the aluminium, and what they're finding is that it's killing the plants and it's stopping them from being able to grow the vegetables and stuff like that because of the aluminium that's in the soil, because aluminium is toxic to pretty much everything along the way, but it's also in the air still. So you're going to get some interaction with light and energy, because aluminium is a very good conductor as well. Yeah. So,
okay, next one. Just that purple area is cold. That's in Africa. You can't quite see where Africa is. The blue areas are cold, and then you've got those red areas that's hot. Just to show that it's happening in pockets, that the hot areas are in pockets, but they're not reporting about these cold areas that are coming up. So, but if you get onto Facebook and get onto the Grand Solar Minimum, they'll post these are from the NOAA satellites, and some from the NASA. That's just another these weird rainbow. They're getting hundreds of these photos come in. some of them could be. That's just. Even like it's very cold and wet in Arabia. The massive flooding there, massive thunderstorms, just weird stuff happening. Again, you've got the cold period. Now you're not hearing about the volcanoes. Whenever you look outside of an evening, sometimes you get those iron oxide sunsets. You've got those red, crimson. That's the iron oxide from the volcanoes. Not hearing about. You heard about the one in Tonga. You're not hearing about all the other ones. This is just one that's I'm not sure what that is.
Iceland, probably.
Wait, this is a bit off track. This is the Milky Way. I think we're about 1/3 down in one of these arms there. Now, some scientists are doing the best I can studying clouds, and they've got no doubt that when clouds can only be formed by cosmic rays, there's no other way. If you look at like a heating tower, got all that steam come out, looks like a cloud, but then it fizzles out, and the only way is because it's cosmic rays, and also that the sun is at a constant temperature. It doesn't change its heat. It does get angry and chuck hissy fits. It can chuck a lot of solar radiation, plasma radiation. It can get the sunspots where you've got a lot of magnetic fields happening. So when that happens, it's throwing a lot of heat at the Earth at that time, but the sun itself doesn't actually get hot and cold. But what it does when it gets throwing these fits, when it's getting the even those, but anyway, when a lot of activity, you get that magnetic protection around Pluto and the heliosphere. That gets stronger, and there's less radiation coming into the planet, the cosmic rays, and therefore you get less, if that happens, you get less cloud cover because there's not much cloud being formed and the planet gets hotter. And so these scientists who were studying clouds were, that was fair enough, but they couldn't, like every 100,000 years we get a major ice age. And so that couldn't explain that. But what they found out is that, just say Earth was here in the middle of that arm, the Earth and the Sun's solar system actually travels around this arm. It goes from end to end. Every 100,000 years it gets to one end, and then it changes around, goes through the arm and comes out the other end. And every time it gets to the end of the arm, you get the major ice age. And so what they worked out was that we're actually when we're in the middle, we're getting protection from all the other magnetic fields of the solar systems in the Milky Way. But when we get to the edge, we get less protection from them, and most of the radiations come from other galaxies in the universe. And so we're more exposed to more cosmic rays when we're at the edge. And it perfectly matched when these ice ages happened. The paper wasn't widely accepted, except that they can't fault anything. It's just so I'll just say that they scratch their head, why can't you accept this? But it's quite obvious about that. You see these orbs here? They're like in the sky. They look like the moon on a sunny day, like you can actually see. It's not. There's hundreds of these photos are coming in. I hope we get to see one. There's too many of it. Like I was thinking maybe it's fake. There's been so many, but all around the world they're coming in. They're just like these orbs, and the theory is that it's just the cosmic rays creating a
aggregating or something.
Yeah, going around in circles and making it bigger. They're eating or something like that, you know. But yeah, I don't know. The next one. This is the signs of and symptoms of the grand solar minimum. It's a period of extreme weather in all categories. Record hot and cold. Record droughts. Record rain, a year's worth of rain in 24 hours. Multiple 500-year floods events. Record hail, size and severity. Extreme cold winters. Grey seasons become shorter and shorter. It's happening here, I can tell you. Grow zones will shift, like the wheat belt here in Australia. The wheat, I don't know if you've heard about it, is the nutrition value is very low. We're not getting much money for it. If they can move it a bit north, the wheat belt, they'll probably do a bit better. So they're the grey zones will shift, the greening of deserts, which is actually happening in some parts of Africa at the moment, massive electrical storms. Valentina was saying that in 2030 is when we're going to get some really bad weather. We already were, but anyhow, that's what she said. And early and late frost. Oh, okay, thanks. Just some more of the orbs there.
Have you spotted any yourself? You seen any orbs? We're looking out for them now.
I think it's springtime of the time.
So that's in clear blue sky almost, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's sort of appearing.
It's weird, yeah.
Wow.
I just got this, I just saw this post on one of the sites. Like learned about the increase of the radiation not only on human DNA but also on plants. And he's using polycarbonate. He was in Canada. A lot of vegetables in certain areas are dying very quickly there. But he found out the polycarbonate was a great material to protect from UV. Yeah.
Wow.
Greenhouses,
Just a bit more of these weird. That's actually in Tasmania, so we have got a chance of seeing stuff like that soon.
That metallic stuff, you see that in the sky all the time now. Oh, all the time.
Another one there. There's an earthquake. So the satellites can actually pick up movement, which is earthquakes. So they get reports of 2,411 earthquakes in Iceland.
How recent is that?
That was only last week.
Current?
Yeah.
So all those dots were where there were earthquakes, is that correct? Yeah. All those dots is where there were earthquakes?
That's sort of like a typical iron oxide sunset caused by volcanoes.
Is that bright? We've been having really bright orange sunsets at the moment.
Iron oxide from
Is that what that is? I took a photo of it the other day, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
It had rain in it as well. There's rain coming through the middle of it. It's just
About 18 years ago we had a volcano go in Philippines and I was saying like on the news, go out and watch the iron oxide sunsets.
Yeah, right.
They're not saying that now. So that's just another one of those things that we're seeing. I think we're going
Other way.
other way, yeah.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
I was going to read that again.
It's like it's repeated.
Oh, right, yeah.
so, Mark. The upshot of it all is food storage.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah.
Looking for answers.
Yeah, it's a big spec. Always was.
We're going to need a 30-year supply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. What period are you looking at the supply for?
I think for the transition period until we get a basic community, if there's a life, like if we can.
2 years, 3 years?
I think so. if
Yeah,
you
right.
can,
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah. Oh, that's just, that green cloud is hail. This is like pretty extreme in America somewhere, Decatur. Yeah, the massive hail after that cloud came.
That brings us back to the beginning.
Yeah,
Very nice. Wow.
Yes.
There's a couple of there's one there about one lake in Greenland, although it's summer in the northern hemisphere, it's growing with ice. The Baltic Sea ships can't get through there because the ice is actually growing up in the northern hemisphere.
Well, at the moment,
Yeah, and Greenland is probably the really significant amount of ice coverage that is growing in summer. And I had a picture of a guy who's a climate change activist trying to give people satisfaction that the ice increase in Greenland is not as bad as they say. He's trying to find parts where it's melting. He found a hole in the ice. And he stood in front of it to show people, look, the ice is actually melting here in Greenland. He fell into it and died. So
He took that karma.
Yeah, so...
Friends in Alaska,
Yes.
and probably be 4 weeks ago, all her water pipes were just totally frozen up. It was so cold. She said it was just bitterly cold, and they were days and days and days without running water.
Even in that modern minimum, like we've got parts of Greenland stayed hot and parts of Siberia stayed hot. So we really don't know, but the majority we are going to get very cold, as you say. And the northern hemisphere, that's it's summer. As the same as the places that are getting covered in snow. And,
Start using.
yeah, so that's it.
So thank you. That's
start
really, really interesting.
Woolly underwear.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike.
No worries.
So I'll get part 2 in the car on the way back, mate.
No, it's go to sleep. Go to sleep, you're not allowed to talk to me.
Got to get some sleep.
So I've got some
It's
questions.
going to get very cold. How many degrees on average would it go down?
I really don't know. I do know that that bloke was from the Sydney University saying that ice cap to come to the south of New Zealand. That gives an idea. There would be signs of how cold it is that someone knows. I think these Russian scientists, there's a couple that John L. Casey, he's gotten unwell, so he's using these a couple that try to get on YouTube, and they work with the Russian scientists, and they sort of got a good idea how cold it will get, but their work gets taken off quite regularly. So.
Last week in the South Island of New Zealand, my daughter's in Littleton and her partner went to Wanaka, and they had such a massive snowfall that it closed the main highway and it closed all the alternative routes, and it was 2 days before the snow stopped falling, and she's got a magnificent view out of her lounge room window over Diamond Harbour and the Port Hills. And she showed me, and right across the top of the Port Hills, about that thick was
Covered.
snow.
Yeah. I heard the record ski season, same here in Australia. Yeah.
Marilyn, I don't know whether it was in one of your treasure